Thank you, everyone, for staying around. I know I stand between you and drinks in a few minutes, so I'll try to shorten this a little bit from the original length. And I thank Tommy for introducing Minecraft to us. My 7-year-old son wanted to know what I was talking about today, and I said I'm going to talk about JavaScript journalism. So he said, you got to make the title more exciting. So in Minecraft, we made this title screen. Oh boy, now what's going on? There we go. Okay. Thank you. So this is on JavaScript journalism. You can go to javascriptjournalism.org or javascriptjournalism.com. Several domain names to get you there and see the slides. And oh, great. Now the arrow keys don't work. There we go. Okay. Thank you for all the technical help. I first proposed this talk just about a year ago, and gave the talk. The first time I talked about JavaScript journalism was a year ago at JSConf. And shortly after the video got released, there was a lot of comments. As you see, some negative comments, and I don't know why people thought it was necessary to repeat themselves and say no, 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 no about JavaScript journalism, but they did. But there were some more positive comments too. Robert King from ESPN, very nice comment, and Neiman Journalism Lab featured the talk on their blog, which generated a lot of comments. This was the post they did. So what is JavaScript journalism? It's a different way of telling news. Just as photojournalism tells news in a story other than text, JavaScript journalism is another means of telling stories that can't be told any other way. And this is my go-to example, if you would. This is Words That Last, a Washington Post story about words that are 10,000 years old, that are in the same, sound the same across many different cultures and across a wide geographical area. And certainly it's a story that was told in, or news that was reported in a scholar's journal, but it really doesn't sound the same when it's on paper. You can't really hear the words and play them. So in this story, you can actually, when it's on the web, you can play the sounds. You can hear the words themselves, hear how they sound different. It's just stories that you can't do on paper. There's no paper in the country that's online anymore that can report an election without JavaScript. The API feeds that come in, the maps are updated, the graphics that are done, all require JavaScript. In fact, if you look at the amount of JavaScript in most of the major websites, newspaper websites or news organization websites, you might think they might have more JavaScript in terms of characters than they have characters of text. And that's true because you've got jQuery and you've got some ads there. But the amount would surprise you. There's on the the Wall Street Journal homepage, there are 10 times more JavaScript in terms of characters than there are characters of text. And most news organizations are the same. Another example is from USA Today, and it's an honor to be here to speak in this building today about this topic. And they ran this story just recently, Behind the Bloodshed. I don't know if any of the people who wrote the story or worked on the story are here today, but this is outside the normal template of the USA Today. It really doesn't fit in the paper to be able to tell this whole story. The graphics, the interaction, It's really meant for the web. Snowfall. Many people here in the room seen the New York Times article from last December, snowfall. Won a Pulitzer Prize. Just a very dramatic story, and if it would have been in the normal New York Times template, where you have to click page after page, you would have had to click 47 times to read all the pages of text. No one would have read all the way through it. Yet millions of people came to this page and read all the way through the whole story. And it won the Pulitzer Prize, and I thought the committee got it wrong, and I got a lot of heat for saying this, but a project enhanced by the deft integration of multimedia elements. It was JavaScript that made them be able to tell that story. And I think of JavaScript journalism as covering a wide spectrum of things. It's not only the data integration and the maps in long-form journalism, but you have slideshows and multimedia that you can't do any other way but with JavaScript. And new ways of presenting those are coming about all the time. You're seeing full screen presentations, almost cinematic effects in these stories to be able to present the news in different ways. And you're seeing nonlinear things too. You're seeing navigation, for example, that may have you enter a zip code to get you to the right section of the story related to your locale, particularly in election news. You're seeing things presented in a matrix or a mosaic format. You're seeing timelines, and I think this is a really underdeveloped area and where you see a lot of growth coming out. And there are jobs all over the place. This is a job at Stanford University for, basically, if you read through it, is a programmer journalist. It's a JavaScript journalist position. And this influence is going outside of the news organizations. Other people are reporting news in this format now. This is the Museum of Mario that reports. It's a sort of like a feature story on the whole history of Mario through the years, and you can actually play different aspects of the game as you go through the story. And one of the reasons you saw that reaction at the beginning where people say, no, 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 this can't be, please stop, is old media theory from Marshall McLuhan would always say the content of any medium is always another medium, which is why you don't recognize it. The content of the JavaScript journalism is the same as what the old media is. Has the text, has the photos, but it's in a new format. It becomes something different. Like my son was asking, what is JavaScript journalism? I tried explaining it's not JavaScript, not journalism. Even though he's 7 years old, he knows what JavaScript is. I had to explain journalism. I said it's sort of like ice cream in a way. It's not about ice and it's not about cream. It's about something different. It's a hybrid. It's something that isn't just one or the other. He sort of got that. And these are several reasons why it won't go away. And one of them I think that is very important is if you look at the volume of these stories, and if you go to javascriptjournalism.com, you'll see that there are 50, 60 stories like this, that these stories have a longer shelf life than the typical news story. You can go back to that Snowfall article published last December, read it, and still be interested in that story, and people are going back to it all the time. It has a very long shelf life. Words that last. Those words are 10,000 years old. I don't think that story will be on the web 10,000 years from now, but it certainly has a longer shelf life than a typical newspaper who wants yesterday's news. So you have a really different way of telling the news, something that's really different that's happening, and a lot of people don't see it as different because, like I said, it's part of what we see all the time with the words and And I go back to photojournalism. This is shots of two very famous papers, obviously, #1 papers in our country, USA Today and Wall Street Journal. Photojournalism really started in about the 1880s, 1890s, and it reached its golden age at the early 1900s. But it wasn't until the 80s that the Wall Street Journal regularly published photos. They thought that news is text and news is only text. When USA Today came out with photos and colors and a lot of splash, a lot of very noted journalists came down and said, this isn't journalism. This is not telling stories. There was a belief that news is text. But there's not a newspaper or news organization around now that wouldn't send a photographer out on a major story. Wouldn't have a front page without a photo on it or an image. It took a long time, but it became accepted. In fact, we saw a very different way where we saw entire publications like Life magazine being different than Time because they were taking advantage of photojournalism. Even though in the early days, Look and Time were publishing the same news photos that the newspapers were doing. They were doing in different presses, different level of resolution. It became a different medium, so you had these news magazines that depended on photos. And I expect that we'll see the same type of thing happen in the journalism space online, and that you'll see these JavaScript journalism pieces, like I have shown some examples today, become the major part of a newspaper or a news publication that's somewhere as a hybrid between newspapers and magazines. I don't know what it's going to be called, but I think that's what I expect we'll see happen. So if anyone has any questions, I think we have a couple minutes. Okay, go ahead.
So why JavaScript journalism and not Adobe Flash journalism?
There is Alsop's rule that JavaScript will, anything that can be written in JavaScript will be written in JavaScript. And I think you see that more and more, that you'll see all sorts of things converted into JavaScript. I think it will be the dominant language. It's certainly dominant language on the web. You're even seeing 3D high-intensive graphic games now being compiled from C++ into JavaScript. So that's why JavaScript. What? I know. I'm taking only 10 minutes instead of 15. Okay?
Why is not interactive journalism?
It may be interactive journalism. I'm not certain what it is. In fact, it could be anyone. I'm not sure what the name is. I'm just trying to point out I think this is what the trend is. I think it's an easy way to talk about it. So.
It takes a lot more time to create a program than to write an article.
Not necessarily true. Because you're using libraries and you're making these articles interactive, and the amount of time it takes to do a long journalism piece can be just as long. So. Okay, I won't take any more time. Thank you very much.